Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Her Side of the Ruck. I'm Tash,
I'm Bernice.
and we're not pundits.
We're just two women who know what a ruck is.
Well, what a weekend of international rugby that was. That was another Springbok win with a scrum, well, that effectively decimated the Irish pack. England have a clean sheet of wins this autumn, so both Bernice and I are very happy women right now. Italy were challenged by Chile in that fixture. Scotland nil, another team at Murrayfield. And the Wallabies, poor Aussies, they walk away with no wins from this autumn. And despite a big scoreline against the All Blacks, is there a Welsh revival happening under Steve Tandy? Well, we'll discuss all in this episode of Her Side of the Ruck. But before we get into that, I think we just have to give a word on Malcolm Marx, voted as World 15's Player of the Year. I think it is a fantastic selection. Bernice, can I just get your reaction and your thoughts? Because he has been so close to winning it several times before, and finally he gets over the line.
Yeah, I think super well deserved and massive congratulations to Malcolm Marx. I think he had a very good season, and like you've mentioned, he came so close to winning it a few times. And I think he is probably one of our most consistent hookers, and it's just very well deserved. I think it could have gone to either of those players. I think it could have gone to BLPRA, to Peter Safe, or to Ox. I have to say there's a little tiny part of me that is sad that Ox did not get the award, but needless to say, a South African got it, and I think Malcolm Marx is very well deserved of the award.
Absolutely. His name's been around a long time in South African rugby, so big congratulations to Malcolm there. Also, Breakthrough Player of the Year, Fabian Holland, the second rower. He made his debut in July, played the full 80 minutes against France in that fixture. But look, I will say, maybe it's English bias here, but I do think Henry Pollock's been hard done by on this occasion because
Yeah.
he had a huge performance in the Autumn Nations and the Six Nations against Wales. He was a key playmaker in that team. He was in the Champions Cup final with Northampton Saints against Bordeaux. Okay, Saints didn't win, but again, it was a very good performance. He was on the Lions tour. He's had a fantastic impact off the bench. But look, I think Henry Pollock will be in everybody's minds, and at least Fabian Holland has cemented himself as Breakthrough Player of the Year, but not to take away from Holland, statement player and very well deserved. Okay, let's move on to the matches of the weekend, starting with Wales versus New Zealand. I don't think the 26-52 scoreline, I don't think it reflects how well Wales played in this fixture. And I think a lot of Kiwis were very worried, particularly in that first half.
Yeah, I have the exact same note on my side where I just said I think there were a lot of nervous All Blacks fans, especially when the score was 23-21. And even I, like myself as a neutral, was a little bit like, oh, like, how is
Mm.
this gonna go? Because obviously we've seen where Wales's rugby is at the moment, and obviously the All Blacks are a little bit inconsistent as well. Yeah, I think there were a few nervous moments, but again, the All Blacks did what they didn't do against England, is where they got better in the latter half of the match.
Mm.
And we've spoken about it so many times where early in the year they were not as good in the latter parts of the match. And then later on in the year, in the test matches, they were a little bit better in that era. And then again on Saturday, you could see they were a bit better. It just feels like the All Blacks are the team that knows when to win and how to win. And I think that's
Mm.
kind of just what came through was their experience. But yeah, I think Wales did really well. I think under the circumstances, and I think unexpectedly as well, they performed really well. Tom Rogers scored a hat-trick try, which was amazing.
Mm.
And also, despite their loss, their 26 points was actually their highest total that Wales have ever scored against the All Blacks. So, which is crazy. Yeah, I think it wasn't a perfect performance from the All
Mm.
Blacks, but I think they will probably be very happy with the result and ending off their tour on a high note.
Absolutely. They retain second place in the World Rugby rankings below South Africa and above England. So I think it's a successful campaign for the All Blacks. And I think for both sides, they can take away positive learnings from that
Hmm.
fixture. But yeah, you've mentioned the big name there with Tom Rogers getting that hat trick. That kept Wales Wales in the fight. And I think one thing that has been a recurring theme in the Autumn Nations is the number of substitutions that come on at the same time in the second half. The
Mm,
four substitutions for New Zealand at the 54, 55-minute mark, Sivu Reece, George Bower, Fletcher Newell, Finlay Christie, all coming on the bench. We are seeing this trend in men's international
mm,
rugby where whether it's been influenced by Razzie and the bomb squad with multiple players coming on at once, the physicality, the physical intimidation of seeing three or more players running on the pitch all at once, substitutions, we are seeing that spread across several teams at international level. And look, I quite like it. I think it adds to the drama. Just a final note on
mm.
Wales and the atmosphere. The operations team and the events team at the Principality absolutely smashed
Yeah.
it this weekend. It looked like such a fantastic event. And I think because Welsh rugby has been in such a difficult place for quite a long time, having an
Mm,
event like that, despite the scoreline, although you have mentioned a really positive spin to that in the history of Wales against the All Blacks, it makes you want to go to the games. I mean, I think the
yeah.
Principality is a fantastic stadium anyway, but
Mm,
wow, it looked like an immense event. So I'm very jealous of anyone who went to that game, to be
yeah.
honest. Moving on, Ireland v South Africa. The Springboks get their first win in Dublin in over 13 years. This was one of the most incident heavy games in modern rugby history. Four yellow cards and one red card to Ireland. A huge credit to the Irish side for staying in the fight, but I feel like the box, they wanted to not put necessarily a big score line on, but showed Ireland what they were physically capable of because the line out and the scrum
Mm.
was immense.
What a roller coaster of a match. I feel like it wasn't necessarily the match that everyone expected it to be, but it was physical and it was cinematic. There was a lot of
Mm.
drama in that match. You already mentioned the bunch of yellow cards and the one card that got upgraded to a red card, which we'll probably discuss a little bit later. But I felt like the atmosphere and the intensity really lived up to their expectation.
Mm.
There were a lot of niggle in the match, and especially the vibe around the stadium. They started the match off by playing Zombie, and yeah, so you could just feel the vibe at the stadium between the players. The last time that South Africa played Ireland was in Durban in South Africa.
Mm.
And I don't like saying this out loud, but I think the Springboks were a bit bullied by Ireland in that sense, in a physical way, and which is not something that you usually see from another team dominating South
Mm.
Africa physically. And
Mhm.
I think we did not forget, Franco Mostert walking away with a broken leg and Eben Etzebeth's face bleeding and also the last minute drop goal. But yeah, so I think in this sense, we were like, okay, that is kind of what we want to do to them
Mm.
this time around. So yeah, I think there were two key things that stood out. One was the physicality of the
Mm.
match. You already mentioned the lineouts and the scrummaging. I know that the Springboks, like we all know that the scrums are very good and we are very physical, but I feel like I haven't seen anything like that. Like that was really insane. And not just from the players that started, but also from the bench. And that was really good to see. And I think the second theme was Ireland's ill discipline.
Mm.
They went down to 12 players at one point. It was things that you could argue that the ref had a very big impact on this game, and some might say that the ref handed out too many yellow cards. Some might say that there were a few cards that actually didn't go to Ireland, that they should have got more cards. So there are a lot of controversy around the yellow cards and just the match in general. But I think things like Jack Crawley slapping the ball out of the
Mm.
hands of Cobus Reinach and James Ryan's yellow card that was later upgraded to a red. Those are things that you have control over and that you shouldn't do as a team and as a player. So yeah, I think those were the two themes that really stood out for me.
I would argue that the Springboks forced Ireland to concede penalties because the scrum was so good. Now,
Mm,
when you're at that point,
mm,
like every opportunity South Africa got to scrum, they took it. You are tiring out
mm,
Ireland in the set piece in
yeah.
that regard. Like you could have gone, oh, we'll kick to the corner, or no, we'll take the 3 points. And maybe in a World Cup campaign, that might be what could happen. But on this occasion, I do feel like it was the memories of what happened in Durban, as you've mentioned, and they
Mm-hmm.
wanted to not rewrite the story, but add another chapter to the narrative on this occasion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they really did. And I think they forced Ireland into some penalties. Look, the James Ryan clear out, it was unnecessary. He didn't need to do that. I feel like, I don't know, I just thought he gave it away and it put Ireland under pressure. Some of the other penalties, I actually don't, the yellow cards and penalties, I think they were the correct decisions because South Africa were
Mm-hmm.
just so dominant on this occasion. But look, give credit to Ireland. They defended for a long periods of time with 12 to 14 men on the field.
Mm-hmm.
They, for large parts of that match, they didn't have a full squad on the field. So look, credit to their defence. I think Andy Farrell, I mean, I saw some of his things that he said
Mm-hmm.
post match, just being like, I don't think I've ever seen a game of rugby like that. I don't think anyone has seen a game
Yeah.
of rugby like that in modern history. So it was so fascinating to watch. If you are a true rugby fan and you love the physicality and you love the set piece, this match was the one for
Mm-hmm.
you. And I think it will be remembered equally as much whether you're an Irishman or whether you're a South African, but for different reasons. One thing I will say is Ireland were stronger with their rucks. They had 91 rucks won compared to South Africa's 59. I think that is a positive stat that they can take away from this game. But look, the box set piece was amazing. 18 lineouts won, 12 scrums won, and 2 lineout steals. South Africa are a force to be reckoned with at the minute. And look, I'm hoping England do have a good campaign in the Six Nations and that competition in the summer
Oh,
between the Boks and the English.
word.
Oh, that's an exciting one, but a long way ahead to go. Okay, let's move on. Italy versus Chile. I thought Chile were not going to front up as well as they did, but wow, they really surprised me, to be fair. I think they gave the Italians a really good push. This is the first meeting between the two sides, and they would not achieve victory at all. This is a performance that Chile should be really proud of. That's not to say the Italians shouldn't be proud of it, but I do think Chile have shown why they have qualified for the Rugby World Cup 2027. And look, I'm excited to see where they grow as a team.
I think this is a step in the right direction for Chile. I also want to congratulate Chile for winning the Try of the Year award. I think that's amazing, and I think it's so great those type of teams also get the recognition that they deserve. So
Mm.
amazing. This is really a match to remember for Chile, and this is really something going into preparations for the World Cup that they can really build on. I think Italy started off strong with Capuazzo's try, followed by a Moore
Mm.
try, and he's just an incredible player, and I love seeing him play. Obviously, not against the Springboks or England for that matter, but he's really a good player, and he just goes from strength to strength every time you see him play. But yeah, I think as you've mentioned, I did not expect Chile to front up as well as they did.
Mm.
And at one point in the match, the scores were actually quite close. And I think Italy had a solid performance. They didn't have a flawless performance.
Mm.
But I think what I like about Italy is that they really have a variety in terms of their way of playing. They use their forwards well, they kicked very smartly. Their backlines, like the attack of the backline, were really incredible to see. I think it was just that execution at times that weren't there.
Mm.
And then for Chile, I think they scored 3 tries against a Six Nations side, which is really something they can be proud of. And
Mm.
they showed good attacking intent. They made Italy actually fight for the win, which I think was very unexpected for a lot of people.
I love how World Rugby now is there's teams all over the world that are really taking their chances and trying to front up against top 10
Mm,
teams. And I think that's excellent to see. So, look, I think
mm,
for me, one of the standout tries was by Nicholas Sabb. It was a lovely catch from a hanging ball, great acceleration. And the
yeah.
way he just kind of caught it in his
Mhm.
forearms and then brought it back into his hands was an example of
Yeah.
great control. So there were some absolutely stunning
Mhm.
tries. Yeah, and Capawatsu for Italy and Nicholas Sab for Chile. Some great tries there. And this was a very exciting match when I didn't think it was going to be, but it turned out to be, which is great for rugby fans.
Mm.
Okay, let's move on to France v Australia. Oh, you gotta feel for the Wallabies because they were square at half time with the French, and then France just kind of pull
Mm.
it away. Look, Fabien Galtier made 6 changes at 64 minutes into the game, and it just kind of confirms the theory of several teams across the world now who are using the bench and just kind of going offloading the bench all in one go.
Mm.
For me, I have to say Thomas Ramos was on fire for France, and Max Jorgensen and Angus
Yeah.
Bell was the same for the Wallabies.
It's a pattern for Australia, isn't it? Like we've seen it where they were either square or the scores are really close at
Mm,
halftime, and then the score ends up being a big margin against them. And yeah, I think it's just been the theme of the series where Australia is fatigued. They just can't close the match, and it's really disappointing to see it. It's the first time in 67 years that Australia didn't win one match in the autumn internationals, which is, yeah, I think it's very disappointing. Yeah, I was also looking at that stat and I went, there's no way. So it
mm,
would be really disappointing for Australia. I know they are getting a new head coach and they're going through a lot of changes, and I think this was just the tour and the timing of the tour, I think, was just not great for them.
no.
Um, yeah, so it was disappointing, but nonetheless, I think you have to give credit to France. As you've mentioned, Thomas Ramos has been incredible, I think, throughout the whole autumn internationals. You could see that France played like the typical French flair rugby, which is always so exciting to watch, and you just love to see that. But yeah, I think Australia, to me, from the whole like autumn internationals, I think Australia walk away kind of as if you look at the winners and the losers of the tour, I think Australia definitely fall under the losers, but just in terms of if you look at the season that they actually had in terms of Test rugby, they actually had a good year, and
Mm,
you thought that Australia were on the up, and
mm.
I was really excited to see Australia play in the autumn internationals, and for them to walk away with no wins on this tour, I think it's really disappointing.
It's tough. I do think the performance against France was probably one of their strongest performances. And I feel like
Mm.
they could feel hard done by, but I think they should walk away from the fixture against France feeling proud because like take Jorgensen's try at 54 minutes, for example. He basically ran three-quarters of the
Mm.
field. He was chased down by two French players, chips the ball, chases it, gathers it over the line. It was absolutely immense. It was so good. But it happened because it was a good grab by Josh Nasser and offloaded to Jorgensen. That was a beautiful example of two players linking up together and making opportunity, taking up the
Mm.
opportunity out on the outside. Where France are so good is they always take the opportunity on the outside, and that is how they scored them the majority of their tries
Mm.
on this occasion. And a lot of them came from Biel Barret. He is just so good. Like he is so fast. There's a reason why he was nominated for World Player of the Year. He plays for an excellent team in the top
Mm.
14. You have to shut him down. If you don't shut him down before he starts to like kick on, he's going to score a try or at least offload it to somebody else. In this case, he selflessly offloaded one of the tries to Nicolas Duporter and he could have scored it, but there were two players on the inside of him. And I just
Yeah.
thought, yeah. And it's also an easier conversion when you throw it inside. But Angus Bell's try, he's such a hybrid front rower. And that's great.
Mm.
Like when you see him run,
Yeah.
he really picks his knees up and accelerates. And
Yeah.
I think that was really great to see because normally when we've seen him score, it's from short range. So this was another really exciting game. I genuinely feel like this weekend has been the best weekend in the autumn nations.
Mm.
It's kind of with all of these fixtures, there's been something exciting about every single one of them. Australia will feel hard done by, but lads, enjoy your holiday, enjoy a break, have a great Christmas because I think you need it after a really hard year and you've put some great performances out there. I am looking forward to seeing how France plays without Dupont in the men's Six Nations or if Dupont does
Mm.
majestically return from his injury. Oh, I feel like a Dupont French side. That's very, very scary. But that is for 2026. Moving on to Scotland v Tonga. kind of the result which I think a lot of fans were expecting. They nil. Well, I didn't think they would have nil Tonga, but they did. They nil another team twice now in this Autumn Nations series. And unlike last week, they didn't lose the 21-0 lead after half time. Three quick tries in the forwards in the first half: Jamie Ritchie, George Turner, and Max Williamson, which is a bit interesting for Scotland because normally it's their backs that score the majority
Mm.
of tries against nations like Tonga. But it's great to see the forwards get over the line. And then one of our favourite players, George Horn, got two tries. He slots the conversions after Fergus Burke goes off the field. I don't think Tonga helped themselves on this occasion with their discipline. They had a red card after 4 minutes, and it basically gave Scotland a huge advantage. And then they got three more yellow cards in that game. That is just a momentum killer.
It definitely is. And you can't build anything if you get yellow cards like that and if you
Mm,
get penalty and if you concede penalties like that, like it's just a struggle to gain any sort of momentum from that. I think Scotland really exploited Tonga's defense and they just used the opportunities. Every time they got into Tonga's half or Tonga's 22, they were able to convert it into points, which I think is really good. I think it was probably a very difficult season for Scotland. I think even though the match result, it's a great result, and I think
mm,
if you don't win against Tonga, then there's even more question marks. So they did what they needed to do, and I think they can be proud
mm,
of their performance. But I think in terms of their overall season, someone also said over the weekend that it is really those big matches that you want to win. So the match against New Zealand where you come so close, the match against the Los Pumas where you did have the upper hand and you'll look back and think, where did we go wrong and what
mm.
could we have done differently? So I think Scotland is really up there and they can compete against nations like New Zealand, like the Los Pumas. It's just a few things that they need to change. So they'll definitely have to go back to the drawing board once they start preparing for the Six Nations, which is around the corner. But yeah, I think over the past few months, people, because of the way that Scotland has been playing, Scotland has actually improved so much over the past few months. And I think
Mm.
since the 2023 World Cup, like they've really improved and grown as a team. And I think there's a certain expectation now when you play Scotland, that they will come for you and they will put out all the stops. So, yeah, I think a lot of people did expect them to give New Zealand a good go, but it's just that, like, those are the games that you have to win or that you have to take away. So, I think Scotland will probably have learned a lot of lessons throughout this autumn internationals, and I am still excited to see what they'll be able to do in the Six Nations. But yeah, I think Scotland did what they needed to do and they played really well. They used their opportunities well. And like you said, most of the tries came from forwards, which is good to see because it's good to see that variety. And George Horn, who's one of our favorite players, had a great match. So we enjoyed that.
Absolutely. I think at least it's a positive boost for the Scots going into the Christmas
Mhm.
period, going into the new year. And then, look, I think the Six Nations this year, it's a proving ground for several teams. I think there's pressure on
Mhm.
every single team this year. And we'll talk more about the
Yeah.
Six Nations in future weeks and months. But I think all of those six teams have a something to really fight for this year. Like if you
Mm.
take like England, this is
Yeah.
the year that they should be they want to come first. Like they lucky
Mm.
or
Yeah.
determined got better to come second last year, but I think it
Mm.
will be a real proving ground for all six teams in the Northern Hemisphere, all those European
Mm.
countries, to really put their mark on and go, this is where we're actually at when it comes to playing people around our own borders, etc. So, so many great international rugby that has
Mm.
happened this year that is coming up, and it's so exciting to be a rugby fan. Another match
Yeah.
the final match that was very exciting, but oh my goodness, very nervous at the end. England v Argentina, drama everywhere in this game. Post match, during the match, I think all the fans were all very nervous. You saw the broadcaster pan to the Argentinian fans in the stadium. Me and my dad watching it at home were literally like, ooh, like my dad was a lot more
Yeah.
confident than I was. He said, "No, we're going to win this game," and I was like, because I couldn't help thinking of the time of the
Mm.
last Autumn Nations when Australia came back in those final few minutes
Oh.
and nicked the win. I just felt like we were going to do a repeat of that and be like,
Mm.
"No," but we didn't. Thank goodness. So, lots of thoughts on this match. My first one is Max Jomo. Oh my goodness. He's only had two caps, but he got a try assist, and the kick to Faye Boso was absolutely stunning, wasn't it? It was beautiful, literally bang on the money. I also rate Faye Boso on the wing. I think he's really proved himself
Yeah.
at 14. Great under the high ball, great aerial, just game anyway, so powerful. Like you look at him as a person, you just think like, wow, you are an athlete through and through. So I thought that
Mm.
was an amazing link up. And you looked at the selections from Steve Borthwick and you thought you knew England straight away were going to go for that aerial game with George Ford, Slade,
Mm.
Daly. And Ajomo's been playing at fly half for Bath, which is his club. And him with the link up with Ben Spencer, who also plays at Bath, I think that was a fantastic decision. And Argentina really played into England's aerial tactics in that first half.
Mm.
So first half, I was like, oh great, but what if we have a Scotland? What if we do a Scotland? I was like, some amazing tries scored there. And then I'm
Mm.
going to say for Argentina, I think we say his name every single week. I can't think of an episode that we've not done where I haven't mentioned Santiago Carreras. How good is he?
He's just insane, and it feels like he keeps getting better and better every weekend that he plays. And as you've mentioned, there's not a week that has gone by throughout the autumn internationals where we didn't say his name. And he didn't
Mm,
even start every match. So it just goes to show the impact that he had every time that he comes off the bench. It's insane. And we've spoken about the bench and how a lot of teams are using their bench to gain momentum and to actually go on and win games. But I
mm,
think for Argentina, like they have worked so well with their bench. And even though they didn't end up winning this match, I think Santiago Carreras has just been incredible. Just his composure, his kicking, he's exactly what Argentina needs every single time they end up in that
mm,
position where they are a little bit behind or where they just need that energy injected into the team. He comes on and he does that because he
mm,
just calms everything down and he injects that energy that Argentina needs. But I think England played a very fast pace match. Like they started off very quickly. Yeah, it almost seemed like Argentina couldn't really keep up with the pace that England set
mm,
very early in the match. And George Ford obviously capitalized on the possession and the territory that England had. I think Argentina were their own worst enemy as well in this match. Like, even though they had an incredible fight back in the second half, I do think they had like two missed opportunities very early on. One was a sloppy pass, the other one,
yeah,
they were held up over the try line.
yeah,
Santiago Carreras missed a kick to the post. So they missed a lot of opportunities. They also had a try in the second half they was not given. So yeah, I think Argentina were their own worst enemy in this match. But I have to say that England's really good, and I can't wait to see them play in the Six Nations. I just think what Steve Borthwick is building at the moment is something incredible, and he's using his players in the right way. And I think
mm,
he's also trying to build depth in his squad, which is very good to see because you are building towards the World Cup and you want to see
yeah,
that new blood coming in. But you also want to see one wing that's as good as the other one so that you never have to be concerned about whether a certain player will be playing or not. And I think he's really getting the combinations right and he's really getting the game plan right. So I'm excited for England. I think in the match, they were a little bit fatigued in the second
mm,
half, the first part of the second half. But I think there were a few key moments and a few small wins for England that really helped them stay in the match. I think the Henry Pollock turnover eventually led to England putting on more points on the scoreboard. And yeah,
mm,
there were just like the few small moments. And I think in a match like that, that really matters a lot.
For sure, small wins are everything. Just touching on what you say about Steve Borthwick. For people who don't know about Steve Borthwick and where he was before England, he came in to Leicester Tigers and basically rebuilt the club. And then that in his second
Mm.
season, they won the Gallagher Prem. And given that kind of period of Leicester's club history was very tumultuous, and I mean, to get a win was fantastic. But
Mm.
that was not English rugby right now is not traditional Steve Borthwick rugby. But it just goes to show that
Mm.
he has adapted as a tactician, as a coach, which just shows how good he is, the quality that he is, because he found something that
Mm.
worked really well at Leicester. Now, that style of play did not directly translate to international level. And any coach who thinks that their club strategy will directly translate to international level, I think is wrong because you have got a wealth of talent from so many different clubs in your country, whether you're a team like Scotland and you've only got two clubs ready to pull on and then other players from Bath or Toulouse, for example. But in England, you have 10 Premiership clubs that you can pull on. So you've got all these different styles of rugby coming together. And
Mm.
I think he's done such a great job at knitting them together and really bringing out the best in the players and creating that healthy competition, as you've mentioned. Just one final thing on the decisions in this game. Now, I'm going to say there were some decisions that I did not agree with that were made by the referee, Pierre Brousson. However, the the disallowed tries for both sides, I agree with because when you see the
Mm.
replay in the TMO, Cowan Dickey, he loses it and he rolls it onto the try line, uses
Mm.
his forearm. He lost it out of control. Joaquin Ovieda's try that was disallowed, it was a similar thing, but Finn Baxter had a role of kind of dislodging that. Again, a testament to who he is as a player. I mentioned him last week. I thought he had a cracking game when he came off the bench, and I believe
Mm.
he should start in the front row for England because I think he's massively improved. So I do think on that one, I was really glad that there was consistency of decision making from the referee because I do think the referees in the Autumn Nations have come under the hammer a little bit with the number of cards that players and teams have received,
Mm.
and everyone will have their own decisions about that. And if you have your own thoughts on that, please let us know in the comments down below because we'd love to hear them. So I'm really
Mm.
glad that there was consistency across that decision and I don't think it affected the game too much, although some people will say that because of Argentina's disallowed try, they should have rolled back the clock a little bit. So it should have gone
Mm.
back and given Argentina a bit more time. That could have changed the game, given there were only very few points left
Mm.
in it at the end. But look, another cracking win. I'm obviously over the moon. You're obviously over the moon. And you've
Mm.
got one more game to go with the Springboks going to Wales. Look, I don't understand, no offence understand why this fixture is happening because Welsh rugby have not been in a good place, although they have improved, and I think they're under a revival under Tandy. But it's the end. No other fixtures are happening this weekend. We've got
Mm.
club rugby
Yeah.
returning in England and in the URC and in plenty other areas. And you just think like, why? I understand maybe it's because you want money, but at the same time, I just think the Springboks will steamroll Wales because although Wales have got better and have proven themselves, I just think the Springboks are just so far ahead of them. And my prediction is I think they're going to win by 25 points.
That is a big win, and hopefully we'll see something like that. And I know we think, why is this fixture happening? But I know someone who is going to be very excited for this fixture happening is one of my friends who will actually be visiting from South Africa. She'll fly all the way to Wales. She's flying on Wednesday and she'll be watching the game. So I know she is very, very excited for that. Even the winter they in Wales at the moment. But yeah, I I also think the Springboks will win. I think we are just doing very well at the moment. I know there are a few players that will be unavailable for this match just
Mm.
due to the test window, but not too worried. I think just given how where Welsh rugby is at the moment and where Springbok rugby is at the moment, I think the Springboks will win by 15 points. But yeah, never underestimate any team. So just have to prepare one in the tour off on a high note.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I say sorry, Wales, but I just think objectively the Boks going
Yeah.
to take this one. Well, What a great few weeks we've had of international rugby. We'll be going back to some club action, but also talking about the Wales Springbok match in our next episode. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new. It's so great to have you. We are so close to 500 subscribers, so thank you so much if you have already subscribed. But if you're new to the channel, hit that red button. It means a lot to us. But that's all for now on her side of the ruck. Thank you so much for watching. Signing off from the UK is me, Tash.
Signing off from South Africa is me, Bernice.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.